If heaven could receive mail, to whom would your love letter to grief be about? Welcome, everyone. I'm Tiffany, your Love Letter to Grief podcast host. If this is your first time, please hit the follow button. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. Today we have with us Keneasha Scott, the Director of Regulatory Compliance, who has penned their love letter to grief about their best friend. Keneasha, first of all, I'd like to say how big of an honor it is to have you as a guest, because I understand how personal and intimate the grief journey is, but my sincerest appreciation that you accepted this invitation in hopes that your grief journey and sharing it may help another grieving soul.
Good morning. Thank you.
You're welcome. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start your love letter.
Dear Grief, my task was to write a love letter to you. The easiest way to say this is to say that I have no love for you left. Maybe if you had given me time to prepare for your arrival, I could have prepared. If you had told me how swiftly you would arrive and how destructive you would be, I could have been better prepared. Or maybe if you hadn't stayed so long or come around so often. What I really want to tell you, Grief, is that every time you show up uninvited, when you leave, you take pieces of me with you, without my permission, without my opinion, and without caring about what your arrival does to me. So, dear Grief, I don't know if you will take this personally or not. And at this stage in grief, I no longer care. This letter is to tell you how you make me feel. Maybe if I write this letter to you telling you how I feel, next time you'll knock before entering. When I write this letter, I'm reminded today to share about my best friend, Dervin Daniel. It is so difficult to try to explain what his loss has meant to me, so I can explain it in the only terms I know how, using a food analogy. Dear Darrell, when you left, you did not leave me a substitute. You left me with the friend that I did not ask for. You left me grief. Imagine having your favorite salad, loving every ingredient on that salad, but that salad is only good with your favorite dressing. Let's say Thousand Island, my favorite. Grief decided to not give me Thousand Island dressing, but expects me to just eat my salad without it. They didn't give me the option. Grief waited until after I got ready to enjoy it and then decided to tell me no more Thousand Island dressing. Weeks go by, hoping it will get better. And every time I go back to get a salad, no more Thousand Island dressing. No one asked me for my opinion. No one asked me how I felt about it. I was not given a choice. And I am now expected to go on about my day and eat this salad without my most favorite thing to enjoy with it. I am now expected to somehow replace the joy I feel about Thousand Island dressing with something else. I was not warned, I was not asked, and now I am expected to just adjust and deal with it. With these feelings, I'm also expected to figure out how to be there for others who didn't get their favorite dressing. That is the hardest part. What's hard about this journey, Grief, is that there are those out there who don't love Thousand Island. Equating it back to you, Darrell, they don't have friends of over 30 years like we have, or those who just don't care what dressing they get. Any friend will just do. They get to ask for whatever they want and they get to get it. The hardest part is I'm supposed to be okay with that. These people didn't have what we all had, therefore, they didn't lose what we all lost. These people also get to go on about their lives having their favorite dressing. People think it's easy to just replace it. The anger I feel towards grief is the fact that grief did not ask me how I felt, grief did not knock, and grief did not wait on the invitation to come in. Grief took from me without caring what the taking did to me. The joy I used to feel when our classmates and friends would gather at home, I no longer feel. The excitement around coming home, meeting up, is not the same because now this waiter is giving me my favorite food without my favorite ingredient. The hardest part is being told to be okay with that. I find myself being surrounded by people who don't even eat salad, telling me to be okay with now not having my favorite salad dressing. This translates to there are people who did not have a friendship like ours, never understanding what grief took from us when they took you. Dear grief, not only did you not give me my dressing, you also didn't give it to others who only wanted one thing. They only asked for one thing in particular, Darrell's wife and children. So now we are all left to figure out how to go on consuming our favorite dish without our favorite ingredient. Sincerely, Keneasha Scott, Dervin Daniel's best friend of over 30 years.
It was beautiful. Spoken like only you could speak it. Again, like I said, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. My first question that I want to ask you is, and you spoke about it briefly. I always say people can't truly understand why the grief hurts so much because they don't understand how much the love was. So, can you just tell us a little bit about your friendship and just maybe just give us an insight to why it meant so much to you?
Our friendship was so special growing up in a small town with no brothers. The friendship Darrell and I had, it was something we just fell into. You're around people in proximity, so you're always around them. We were classmates, we lived around the corner from each other. And before you know it, you just fall into a routine. Darrell started driving before all of us, so picking us up in the mornings, being in different classes together. Every plan that was made always included he and I in it. So what happens is you settle into this life, and even when you graduate and go out to college, you plan your life around this person's always there. So we would meet up on I-40. We would head to Wynn. Darrell would come to Little Rock. I would go to Russellville. All of special moments you share together. When you get a special recognition or something wonderful happens in your life, all you want to do is call your best friend and share it. You want to hear about his love journey. You love to hear the great things. He's talking, oh, my wife did this and the kids did that. That was our friendship. It was the hardest part is there are random things that you share with your best friend. When they are gone, you realize no one else will understand the true randomness of it or little inside jokes, that we have, blowing the horn, passing by a car on the side of the road, just little things. A lot of people say sad songs, and with us, it's not sad songs. It could be something as simple as Mr. Big playing, or Notorious Thugs with um, oh, what's his name? Biggie. Biggie and Bone Thugs and Harmony. You hear that because in all of that, all I see is Darrell out there doing it. Our favorite thing in the world to do was dance. So every opportunity we had to dance, we went and danced, even if it meant crashing somebody else's party. That's what our friendship was like. It was so random. It's not anything you would go look up in a dictionary. It was our life. That's how it was. So that's what our friendship was.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What do you think your biggest lesson you've learned in your grief journey?
The biggest lesson learned is knowing that there are two people that are processing this. Growing up Christian and being of the Christian faith, we're taught the spiritual meaning around death. Well, my mind can reconcile the spiritual meaning of death, but the flesh, personal, Keneasha cannot reconcile that. The biggest lesson I learned is that was okay. Two people are trying to process it.
Mm,
Also, a lesson I learned as well in that is everyone's response to that is going to fit into one of two categories. It's a reason why we couldn't get people to understand the spiritual side of it, because they were looking at it from the flesh side of it, which makes perfect sense. Then there were those who saw it from the flesh side that didn't understand it from the spiritual side. So a lot of the anger surrounding it, I had to put it in those two categories to say, which Keneasha is it that's
Mm-hmm.
experiencing this emotion as a result of it? So that was the biggest lesson, is learning that we weren't doubting God because we were questioning what was happening. It was having to learn those were two different people that were trying to process this death. The spiritual answer makes perfect sense, but it does nothing for the pain that our hearts feel.
Right. I think one of the most profound things that helped me with my grief journey was understanding that faith and grief could coexist. Because I would find myself in these moments where I would feel so grateful that God allowed me the time that He did, and He allowed me the conversations that I had, and almost a perfect closure to the story. And then I would find myself questioning my own faith, like, if you trust God, why is it so hard for you to process losing Darrell in the way that you did? And so I completely understand what you're saying about like the two different people, because that's exactly what I was going through. And going right into that, my book is called Love Letter to Grief: Learning to Walk by Faith. And so you talked a little bit about your spirituality. So how was your faith with this process during your grief journey?
My faith with this process was understanding the scientific stages of grief, so that the emotions that I was feeling, knowing that they had scientific reasoning, so no one could try to deter my faith. There are stages of grief, and we have to go through every stage of grief. The
Mm-hmm.
stage that I stayed in the longest was anger. That's where faith came in. The faith came in of understanding that that was a part of the process, because anger is a stage of grief. My anger was with so many people in so many situations as a result of it. And sometimes I worry if that anger is still there. So, where my faith came in was basically letting me off the hook. It was saying to me, it's okay. You're going through these stages. Those stages are not like a lifespan stage, like when you get out of this stage, it's over. Those stages, it's okay to bounce back and forth. It helped me to understand that I'm human. It helped me to understand that God knew what He was doing when He gave me my friend, but I had to also accept that He knew what He was doing when He took him. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to reconcile those two things. I had to understand that God loved me, and it was not done to intentionally hurt me or others. It was what He had to do. And I had to accept that. And it was okay for me to be angry. It was okay for me to be angry at people, angry at the situation, just all the way angry. And it was okay. It continued to remind me of times biblically where people were angry, but nevertheless, they continued on. So it
Mm-hmm.
helped me to understand that when I was mad and I was upset and I was angry, that that was okay, and that God honored that emotion as well. So that's what helped me the most, knowing that it was okay that I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
I was not being sinful. I was not upset with God. I was not going to turn from my faith as a result of it. It was okay, and that so when it surfaces up again, continue to be okay with that, and just don't stay in that stage too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I remember in grief counseling, just talking with my counselor about trying to. I found myself a year later thinking, because of course, no, Darrell passed exactly a week after my birthday, and I remember
Mhm.
constantly thinking, if I could just get back to my birthday, that I would get
Mhm.
back like the old me, and I kept for some reason thinking that was a thing. And I remember the morning of my birthday waking up just heartbroken, that I literally felt like I was back at day one. And my grief counselor explaining to me that it was impossible to get back the old me, because that's not who I was anymore. And it was a very, very hard lesson for me to accept. But I wish I knew that lesson earlier on, because I think it would have helped me. Was there anything that you learned throughout your grief journey that you wish you knew earlier that perhaps if you shared it with, it could help someone that's in their grief journey now?
What you just said, when you told me about that counseling session, it instantly helped me to realize that person is gone. You'll never go back to being that person. So when I have that longing, I go back and I look at all y'all's pictures and things. And I go back and I look at the pictures of you all before he passed, and I look at pictures after to show those people before hearing that news are these people. Now they're those people. And in some type of way, I can tell, like I can look at a picture and I can tell, oh, this was after May 2017. Oh, this was before then. That right there helped me. And I wish I'd have grasped that sooner. I still struggle with that sometimes. And then I go back to that. That person will not exist. The hardest part about the year Darrell passed was the major life events that were taking place. So um, the week he passed, the next week is when my oldest son, that was when Vincent and them had their ring ceremony for winning the state championship. So we had to go from Darrell being here on March 9th when they won to now the ceremony, ring ceremony. So he was here and now here we are. So I became a state championship mom on March 9th. So here we are in May. I'm still the state championship mom, but the feelings weren't the same. Oh, guess what? Because you're a different person now. You're different. So who you would call with the excitement, who would probably have been there, is different. We were in the middle of planning our 20-year class reunion. We had to keep planning that reunion. Me as Keneasha planning it with Darrell was planning it. And I was getting so irritated and frustrated by so many little things. I had to remind myself, you're not the same Keneasha planning the 20-year reunion as you were before May of 2017. So it was trying to get those lessons to understand that while you're going through doing some of the same things, it's a different person that's doing it now. And you're trying to make everything line up and fit for the person you were prior to his passing. And it didn't make sense until you explained that from your therapist, which I also had the conversation with my therapist. And she said, that's what we mean by when we say, who is trying to process this trauma right now? For you to understand, you're a different person trying to process that. That helped me the most to understand this is why it's hard. This is why it doesn't make sense. This is why I'm irritated. I'm still planning prior to May 2017 events, but we're not those people anymore. Every plan for the class reunion, Darrell and I planned it being at the homecoming event the year before. We started planning it from there. So here we are in the middle of planning, and we've got to do this event in October, and he's not here anymore. So realizing it's not the same Keneasha anymore planning it. This is Keneasha without your partner that's helping you plan this, not here.
Yeah. And just to talk about grief counseling, because I always talk about how it was my saving grace. I started grief counseling, I think it may have maybe it was 2.5 weeks after. And to this day, I still am in contact with my grief counselor. And just she was just it was just something about being able to talk about my person to someone and not feel like, oh my God, is she talking about this again? Is she still grieving? And not having the guilt of what grief can create for you. So how was your grief, like your grief counseling, and what have you taken from it?
I love to tell people, I wish I could say that I started grief counseling when we lost our dad suddenly. I did not. I wish I could say I started it the next year when my female best friend lost her 15-month-old son. I didn't. I wish I could say I started it when Darrell passed, when you started going. I did not. What happened was it would be years later before I physically took the step and went. Our granddad passed in September of 2018, and a lot of people think, oh, is that what started it? I said, no, it was October that started it when Wynn lost Eddie. It was at that moment I realized we had relied on Eddie, like the big brother of us all, to kind of see us through the journey. And then we lost him. And it was at that moment I realized I need to take the step and I need to go. I remember talking to you before I went that day. And I stopped in the parking lot. And I remember stopping and going live and telling people these are the steps to take. Step one, two, three, to make it easy on it. I thought it was going to be so big and so major, but it was so easy to do. I thought I was going to have to go in there and say, well, this is what's wrong with me. Because what was so hard about it, I had experienced so much trauma. I'm like, where do I start? Where do I even tell you? Because you're thinking it's like when you go to the doctor and they're like, what's hurting you? And you're like, oh, my knee hurts. So they can do diagnostic medicine to figure out why your knee is hurting. A lot of times we make that mistake. We think so much has happened. I don't even know where to start. So she asked me some words. She said, what made you think you needed to come to therapy? And I said, I have anxiety around the phone ringing. And a combat war veteran in my family said to me, I think you have PTSD. And I said, no, 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 that's for veterans. He was like, no, I think you have PTSD. So she took that to dig into why I have PTSD. That's when all of the grief and all the trauma came up. So it's like I like to tell people, don't think you've gone too far and you've gone too long. Don't think you're going to have to relive all that trauma. They're trying to figure out what is your primary concern and then get to the root of that, of what takes place. And in that grief journey, getting medical help was the most helpful thing because it also diagnosed some things in me that I was unaware I had issues with. It was helpful because of the things I'm able to apply it to, even just as recently as a few months ago. I was crossing the Memphis Bridge. And, everybody makes a joke. I have no phobia. Like, I don't like people. I'm scared of spiders. I don't have that. So I was crossing the Memphis Bridge and my legs started shaking. And I felt like I was about to have a panic attack. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of this bridge. What is wrong with me? So I got across the bridge and I pulled over. And I was on the phone. I called a friend and was like, hey, talk me through this. I was having a panic attack. And she said to me, I'm shocked you're just now having a panic attack around driving. I was like, what do you mean? She said, you literally lost your best friend in a motor vehicle accident. You literally keep getting in car wrecks. Like people keep hitting you for years. She said, it's the most dangerous thing you do for a living. I'm shocked that all these years later that happened. Well, it gave me a chance to have a conversation with my therapist. And she said, yeah, that was one of the things I was telling you about. We need to address this PTSD so that when you start exhibiting symptoms of it, you know how to walk your way through it. She says, now, we didn't specifically talk about driving, but I gave you some tools and things to kind of help you through it so that when you started having a panic attack about things, you can apply that principle to multiple things in life. So I like to share that it's not always about grief itself, what the therapist has helped me with. It's about just navigating regular life because we have so many triggers we're unaware of having.
Right. And just speaking of PTSD, I talked about this in my own episode on my first podcast episode, and I talk about the night that Darrell passed away, and just I guess the guilt that I feel just because like you've always been our person, and we talk about that, but I still have like this a lot of regret that I was on the phone with you and just how you received the news of losing your best friend while being on the phone with me as I realizing that I lost my husband, and that was was a really hard. It took me a little while to just kind of process it because the weight of that, and even when you called me the day you were going into counseling, it just how much relief that gave me because I did understand the weight that situation had to be placed on you, and so I know from what I can remember of what took place on that phone call. And I wrote about it in my book about how you were literally behind the scenes, just orchestrating all these things I didn't even understand at the time that was happening. And so for me, I've said it to you before, but just like I appreciate you for being there, but it still doesn't like take away the heartbreak that I experienced being that you were there. So just from your standpoint of the phone conversation that we had as I made it to the scene of the accident and everything took place, what do you recall from that phone call?
I want to first tell you that God orders all of my steps. And I am so thankful that I was who you were on the phone with. Let me make sure you understand that. If I'd have gotten the news from anyone else, I wouldn't have believed it and I would have immediately been worried about you. Like by the time everybody else got up and started calling me, by then you had finally gone to get some rest. So I wouldn't have been able to reach you. Or like when my sister got to you, when she'd have been telling me, she would have been giving it to me third party. So I wouldn't have really known how you truly were. I thank God every day that I was on the phone with you so that I experienced that when you experienced it. So that as hard as that was to experience, I didn't also have to be worried about you. I didn't have to wonder who's going to get to his mom. We were taking care of all of that at the same time. The things that normally you worry about when there's a death like this, I didn't have those worries. I thank God every day that no matter what time of morning it was, I'm thankful that we have the relationship all of our lives since we were little kids, that I am y'all's person, that you knew to call me. I'm so thankful every day for that. So I want to keep telling you that. I am glad that you called me. That was God ordering you. That was God saying to you, call her now. You know, we think about it that day, he and I had talked and things were like so good that day. And I subconsciously remember my phone ringing. So it kind of woke me up, but I didn't wake up and answer. So when you called back, you remember my joke? I said, I just knew you was calling me with something like sneaking in the room, like, girl, And so that call did not send me into panic because I didn't think you were calling about bad news. In talking to you, remember, we still were unsure if this had really taken place. So I went into Case Scott mode of I need you protected. Are you sure you're about to drive down there? It's late. Have you rested? Can you drive down there? So I got behind the scenes calling around. Remember, I started calling. I need to find out, has this accident taken place? So I started calling all over. It was that last call, that last lady put me on hold. She said, there has been an accident at that location. And then that's when you had gotten to the exit, so you were able to see on the other side. It was confirmed then, alleviated that you were not being driven to danger or harm was about to come to you. But instantly it went into this is much worse. I'm thankful that I was on the phone with you. You have no recollection of this, but you were getting off the exit, and I had to keep telling you I needed you to stop the car because you were just kind of muscle memory driving. And I said, I need you to stop the car. So at that moment, 3 o'clock in the morning, most devastating news has been received. But again, my trauma response is to organize and get everybody figured out. And that's another reason I'm thankful it was me on the phone with you. Anyone else would have lost it with you. So I was trying to get you to pull over safely. When you were like, I got to get out, I got to walk over there, I was making sure you did that safely as well. You even, on your way back home, you said, I need a charger. And you stopped the car and you went in the store and bought a charger. And the man said, how are you? And the way you responded to him, it let me know then, like shock had set in. So again, I was so thankful that I was on the phone with you because the way you respond, I think about that man all the time. That man is probably like, did that woman just say what she said? He wouldn't have known. So I talked to you until you safely made it home. As hard as that news was to receive, I know for a fact that God ordered it in such a way that if you only got a chance to make one phone call, I am so thankful that that phone call was to me because until you got there, until you made it back home safely, you were on the phone with your cousin, your childhood friend, and your husband's best and oldest friend. God ordered that way. He ordered that to happen that way, which helps me now to know that is my trauma response. You know how people say to me, oh, you're too busy. You need to go slow down when something major happens. I'm like, no, this is my trauma response, which my therapist points out. Several other people I know in mental health, they say that to me. Well, you know, your trauma response is to go into action. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go back to that day, and I'm still so very thankful that I was on the phone with you that day. I believe that God had to do it that way. You all had a love like none other for so long through many seasons, little kids, teenagers, adults, parents, professionals. You had all of that. I don't think you would have received the news and instantly gotten peace and closure had it been like how some families, how the police have to come to their door and tell them. I believe that it had to happen that way. That was part of your closure and the start of your grief journey, whether you knew it or not. You know, we believe biblically, you know, God won't give us more than we can bear. At that moment, that was more than you could bear, or so you thought. But I think about it all the time. I'm thankful that you were able to get real time, factual, accurate information and that I was able to receive factual and accurate information from you for us to start moving forward of what the next step needed to be. So again, I need you to be let off the hook. Your brother's calling me. Your big brother. He's like, I don't know. He must sense that you and I are on this thing because your
You
big
can
brother
answer
is
him if you
calling
need
me.
to. You can answer
No,
him.
man. No, you know he know to call back. But think about that. That further confirm that's God again.
Yeah.
That's God again. Like, what are the chances? Because I said yesterday he ain't called all week, and then he's calling right now. Think about that. I need you
Mhm.
to know I am thankful that I was who was on the phone with you
Mhm.
when this took place. I'm forever thankful that if you had to go through that, that God allowed me to be the one on the phone with you when that took place. Because I probably would have reconciled that it was true, the news they were giving me, but I would have
Mhm.
had so many questions.
Right.
The biggest question was, where are you?
Mhm.
Who told you? How did you get the news? Did they follow proper protocol to give you the news? Who's with
Mhm.
you when you all of those questions I would have had. People who don't understand my trauma response, they wouldn't have wanted to answer those questions. See, in
Mhm.
hindsight now it makes sense. They would have been like, why does that matter? Because it matters to me.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that was good for me. And I know we've talked about that briefly before, but I think that's just something that a lot of people who have not gone through grief may not understand. The way you receive news means a lot. Like it's like you say, it starts the grief journey. And I know one of my biggest things when it first happened was making sure that I got my brother to Darrell's mom's house to give her the news, because my biggest fear was having Martarius wake up, our son, my stepson, wake up to the Facebook post how people love to be the first one to report the news, RIP, and all of that. My biggest fear was for him to wake up and that's how he received the news. So I definitely what you said makes perfect sense, because the way you receive the news does it definitely impacts the way your grief journey starts. Um
Definitely.
so and we talked briefly about just like I've already talked about like how Darrell passed away and how I've processed it since then. And with you going through counseling, and I know you've experienced a lot of losses after that and before that, what would you say to someone that's early in their grief journey? Because I mean, we're 7 years out since Darrell passed away. So 7 years since you lost your best friend. What would you say to someone that may be hour 7, day 7 after such a loss? Like, what would you have to say to them?
You are not losing your mind.
Mm,
I know it feels like it. And it feels like your heart will never mend from that, because you're processing your pain and everybody else that's affected by this.
mm,
And it is enough to make you think you're losing your mind. You are not losing your mind. Recognize that you are not going crazy. You are human. So that's the first thing to say, is recognize that. The other is to keep looking for God in the story. A lot of times we've got to be careful imposing a spiritual answer on people, because if we don't understand why God gives and why God takes, the last thing you want is someone to quote a scripture to you.
mm,
So I'll say, God is there, and look for him in every little thing. The most recent loss is my grandmother in July. And that's something our pastor's wife, our pastor, and our congregational care pastor said to me. Look for God in every single thing. And so everything that gives you a moment of peace, happiness, joy, no matter how small it is, that's God.
mm,
No matter how small it is. Even in the anger, I love to keep going back to that anger. If you envision acting out that anger and laugh, you just saw God in the situation.
mm,
Um, the day before Darrell's funeral, a lot of people, they didn't know how I got the news. A lot didn't know until it came out in the book. And what's irritating to me is people come back later. I hate to hear, I didn't know. But what you did know, you should have moved accordingly. So that Friday night, I don't know if I told you this, but I guess it'll make you laugh. The decision was made to do barbecue because,
mm,
Darrell was the master griller. And so we're all at the tech center and everybody's bringing stuff in, dropping stuff off. And I had a pack of buns in my hand. And a couple people came in, and Michelle, our other best friend, she's the social worker. So we laugh about all of our different degrees. She's social work, I'm criminal justice. I don't do gray area. So she was trying to explain that why others acted the way they did, that was how they acted in their grief. It makes
mm.
sense now, but I didn't want to hear that then. And then somebody else came in and tried to like co-sign it. I'll just say one of your classmates by then came in. About 2 or 3 of your classmates came. So they were all trying to co-sign what Michelle was saying. And I said, I have not slept since 3:15 Saturday morning. And they were like, what? And I said, no one thought about how I felt receiving that news at the moment I felt. No one has asked me how I felt. So I don't really care how anybody feels
Mm-hmm.
right now when I say go get an 8-pack of buns.
Right.
And I picked up the pack of buns and I almost threw the buns at them. So every time I get upset in the grief journey with how people are, I envision standing at that table first from y'all's wedding reception when I didn't realize the fish were over in the sink and I panicked thinking, oh my God, we forgot their fish over there. What if somebody has flushed these fish? So here I was, full circle in that same spot, envisioning throwing buns, hitting people. And I laughed. And I say, even in that, that's God in that. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do what therapists call maladaptive behavior. So it was okay because you didn't hit them. But it makes me laugh when I think about it. So randomly, I'll say, all right, keep playing. I'm going to throw a pack of buns at you. So I tell people that maybe in hour 1, hour 7, day 7,
Mm-hmm.
find even the little things that will make you laugh. It's going to come up later. There's going to be some moments.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? It is appropriate to laugh in your grief. It is
Right.
still appropriate to laugh in your grief. That helps you, whether you realize it or not, helps you. And then you're going to remember those funny moments to be able later, when you're having a moment, go back and envision throwing in buns at people. Every time I think about that, every time I think about that, it
Mm-hmm.
helps me because I'm like, I could just hear Darrell like, now y'all know y'all went too far. Now you got buns thrown at your head. Like you know she was only gonna be quiet for so long. Now look at you crying because you hit you upside the head with a bag of hot dog. But
Yeah.
so yeah.
So you mentioned that you would say to someone you're not going crazy, and I remember
Mm,
for a couple, probably 2 or 3 weeks, everybody kept saying, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I was so honest, I was so transparent. I kept saying, "I don't know yet. I'll let you know when I figure it out." And I
mhm,
remember Father's Day weekend, I took the kids on the cruise, and
mhm,
it came to me, and I was able to explain how I was feeling when I was trying to identify my grief. And I talk about how it comes in waves, almost like by
mhm.
just being on the cruise and just having the water around you and just being like how unpredictable water can be, how beautiful it can be, but how unpredictable. And I find myself always referring to like the waves of grief, never knowing when it's going to come, never knowing what sounds or smells or voices or physical things or just material things are going to trigger the waves to come in. How would you how would you say to someone the way you recognize grief? Like, how does it come to you?
Prior to your experience with that, I would have said, "Oh, it comes and goes. I can't explain it. It's not like a pill where within a few days you'll be better because you'll
Mm-hmm.
go back. It's not like the cold when you go the 7 days you're fine. It's not like that. It's not pregnancy. It's not you go 9 months it's over. It's not that.
Mm-hmm.
I could never put it into words until you experienced that and you said the waves.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I now express the days. When people say, how are you today? I can say, the waves are kind of high today. And they understand I'm not losing it. They know, oh, this is just a heavy grief day. Or I'll say, oh, today's a good day. The waves are fine. Even when I need to cry out for help, I may send out a message to some of y'all and say, hey, pray with me or send me something funny, whatever, because today the waves are high.
Mm-hmm.
That is the best analogy. We know the waves are going to recede, but that's hard to explain to somebody where the waves are coming crashing at you.
Absolutely.
You're sitting there paralyzed, you can't move,
Mm-hmm.
and here comes waves crashing at you. We know eventually they're going to go down, but right now they're coming at us.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing That is the best analogy to give. Sometimes looking out at that water gives us peace,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's a big wave comes through and it scares us, or it sweeps us up and carries us off in it. That explanation is the best way to explain the grief roller coaster
Mm-hmm.
in waves. Sometimes the waves are calming, sometimes the waves are high. That gives a way to tell people, um, I'm not okay right now, but it's going to be okay. Don't worry about me. Just know the waves are kind of high. Like, I don't need
Mm-hmm.
you to bother me later. Don't worry. Don't, oh, what's about to happen? No, it's
Mm-hmm.
just right now the waves are kind of high this morning. The waves are kind of high right now. Today is the day those waves are just, ooh, they just, I don't know what they're doing today. And I
Mm-hmm.
just don't like them. So I'm just going to leave. I'm going to walk away from it or whatever. That analogy is the best analogy to give. And you actually, when you compared it, because remember that Father's Day weekend was also y'all's anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really good that y'all were on the water, because that is the best way to compare the up and down roller coaster. Because people think, well, why don't you just get away from the waves? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can't. We got to sit here. Sometimes those waves are calm, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they're heavy. Does it mean we give up on um ever sitting by the water because every now and then the waves are high? We just recognize that's what it is. So that was the best analogy. You actually gave me the way to explain it when I was saying I'm okay, but I'm not okay, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be okay. Though
Yeah.
describing it with the waves, that's the way that has continuously been the way I describe it. Now when people, hey, how you going, how you doing, how's it
Mm-hmm.
going, I'm fine, waves just a little high right now, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One thing about the reason I really wanted to start this podcast, because I really wanted to change the way people talk about grief. And I wanted to give people a safe space to remove the mask, because we become so conditioned to responding to people, how are you? I'm okay. We get so used to, especially us being Southern, we feel like we're supposed to just be polite and say, oh, I'm doing okay. And I really told myself in the very beginning, just be like you talked about how you're not going crazy. I remember waking up days and I was like, I've literally got to be losing my mind. There's just no other way to explain it. It was a very scary, very dark space to be in. But I remember saying to myself, I've always referred to my friends and our family as like my circle of love, and it's a big circle. And I said to myself, I remember one morning I woke up, I could not stop crying, and I had probably 20 or 30 text messages I hadn't responded to. And I made the decision. I said, you know what? It's time to test it's time to test it. Like they say, reach out to me, let me know what you need. They say they want to be here. And I told myself, I said, it is my responsibility. If I expect anyone to understand what I'm going through, I have to give it to them real, and I have to give it to them raw. And I wanted to be as transparent as possible when it came to my grief. I told myself I was not going to hide it. I was not going to sugarcoat it. And I said, if I can go through it, the least the people who love me can do is hear about it. And I meant that. And I wasn't letting anybody off the hook. And for the people that it was too hard to hear, then you weren't supposed to be around me for that season. And so I really want people to give themselves permission to be honest and say the things that don't sound good. I remember one day I was driving, speaking of the Memphis Bridge, and I never thought about suicide. I don't want to even pretend like that, because I never felt that way. I never saw that as an option for me. But I remember driving over the Memphis Bridge and just thinking how calming it would be if I was just submerged in water. Not like
Hmm.
I would do it, but just like what that, like just the peace of the water and how that would make me feel just at peace for just a moment. And I remember how scared I was that I even, because at the time I couldn't swim. And I remember how scary that was to even say. And it
Hmm.
sounded so dark, but I was like, oh, well. And I remember, I
Hmm.
think it may have been Raina that texted me and she was like, how you feeling today? And I told her. And I remember she called me and she didn't say anything. She just called. She just got on the phone. And I think for the first time, like I probably scared her speechless. But I think that's what grief, like I feel like that's our job as people that are going through grief, to be honest with people. So when others are experiencing, they don't think they're going crazy because they've heard others who are going through it be honest about it and transparent, and they share the real dark parts of grief that no one wants to talk about. So are there any moments that you
I
can
want to
think?
say something
Mm-hmm,
to that. I don't want to talk to those people, to you saying you got to be honest and tell people.
mm-hmm,
I want to say this to the recipient
mm-hmm,
of the answer when they ask someone, how are you doing?
mm-hmm,
The reason why so many of us will not give the real answer is because people's response is not comforting.
mm-hmm,
A lot of times people respond without thinking. I definitely know they respond without praying about it because their responses wouldn't be what they are. Some of us have two issues. We're afraid to say we're okay because then the back to me crowd gets back started. Oh, she's okay now.
mm-hmm.
Back to me
Wow.
bothering you. Back to me, back to me. Then we're afraid to say we're not okay because then those unlicensed therapists, I like to call them, give bad therapy advice.
Mm-hmm,
Oh, well, you're going to be okay. Oh, well, God won't put more on you than you can bear. Oh, all that. So we struggle. And unfortunately, we suffer in silence. And it makes me thankful that I have some of you all, my tribe and my therapists, because I know I'm not going to get those responses. So I say to people, be mindful that when the person is honest to you, recognize you may not know how to respond. And it's okay if you don't know how to
mm-hmm.
respond. Just say, thank you for sharing that with me. Let's talk through it.
Right.
When people say it, I hear the words, I feel like they're saying, I understand. And in my professional walk, if there is let's say there's a situation where there's a crime and a hostage has been taken. If the hostage negotiator says, I understand and calm down, I don't know if people know this, but that negotiator gets replaced and suspended, depending on the agency. Because those two statements are two of the most triggering statements to mankind. They're so triggering that it could lead to life or death. I think lay people don't realize how triggering those two statements are.
Mm-hmm,
I said to someone a few months ago, she was bothering me about something. And I said, please leave me alone. I'm about to fall apart. And she said to me, don't fall apart. Well, I translated that to calm down.
mm-hmm,
So my line now is, you don't tell a person don't fall apart. If they had the ability to not fall apart, they wouldn't have told you their
mm-hmm,
issue. They would put themselves back together.
mm-hmm,
So when someone tells you they're losing it, they're about to fall apart and they're struggling and they're dealing with something, I say a person that tells you they're about to fall apart, the only thing that's going to put them back together physically is tape. Offer tape.
mm-hmm.
Don't tell them don't fall apart. Offer tape. So that's what I struggle, because I know a lot of people, they'll hear it and they'll go, well, I'm not going to be honest with people because this is what I get back. So we got to also talk to the recipient of the
Mm-hmm.
I'm not okay message or whatever. The recipient of that has to understand you may not know the words to say in that moment. And that's okay as well. But be careful, because the words you're going to say in that moment may be a trigger as well. While you may not say to the person, get over it, or you should be over this by now, sometimes our response conveys that to people. So
Absolutely.
I'm thankful. I'll say this. I'm so thankful that that's the friend that you called and you didn't call your other friend, my sister. Bless her heart. Immediately she'd have called me. It would have turned into, I gotta call highway police, state police. Where is he? That's what it would have turned into, because
Right.
that's how her mind processes. Like, I am not qualified to help. I gotta
Right.
get some help. You know what I mean? And I love
Yeah.
that. But I laugh when I say that because I love that about her. She'll say, mm-mm, not my area.
Right. Not my
And that's
ministry.
okay. Yes, not my ministry. Guess what? That doesn't make you any less of a friend if a
Right.
friend tells you and you say, I'm sorry, I can't help you through this.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Right.
Chances are when I called you, I knew you couldn't help me. I'm just letting somebody be aware that the waves are high right now.
Hmm.
So that's it right there. It doesn't make you any less of a friend that you're unable to be there for them. And I promise you,
Right.
it doesn't make you any less of a Christian that you couldn't find the proper scripture to quote.
Right.
Because then the anger surfaces back. And, I laugh and say, I'm the 12-time Bible drill champion. Please don't come quoting scriptures to me because some of y'all be quoting hymns and not scriptures. Because I said, that is not in the Bible. Then they're triggered. And I'm like, see, it was me having a moment. Now I got to
Right.
take care of you in your moment because you see what happens there? So,
Absolutely. You make a very good point. I love the way you said, I absolutely love that. You said, don't tell someone not to fall apart, be the tape. And I
be the
remember there are
type.
specific things that have happened for me that I literally can see that someone was my tape. What are some things that examples that either you experienced where someone was the tape or just ways that you can encourage others? Because like I agree, that's perfect. We do need to speak to people who've never been through this. Or maybe they have, they
Mhm.
just don't have the right tools. What are ways that you would say to someone, these are examples that I've experienced of people being the tape, or these are things that you could do to be the tape?
I guess the first example would be using Darrell as an example. We got the phone call on February 10th that our dad passed suddenly, and we had to get the win. And on the way there, Darrell was like, I'm on my way to win. I'm like, no, don't come because you remember Taylor's birthday party was that next day. And I'm like, no, you're not coming to win. Y'all need to get ready for Taylor's birthday party. He was like, I'm on my way. I'm on my way. He just kept I'm on my way. Then when he got to win, he was like, I'm bringing, what do you want to eat? See, that's a trigger right there. A lot of times when a person's in trauma, you can't respond to them. So my response to him was, I'm not hungry. I told you not to come here. So
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, my mind couldn't think of what do I want to eat because I wasn't hungry.
Mm-hmm.
True Darrell, true friendship. He did not listen to me when I said don't come. He did not listen to me when I said I'm not hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, about 11:30, Vincent was like, I'm so glad your friends don't listen to you because I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Darrell was realizing you may not be hungry now, but at 1 a.m. when you get hungry, are you going to have anything to eat?
Mm-hmm.
He sat there on the couch with me. I remember it so vividly. I don't remember anything about our conversation. He sat at the end of that couch and was just tape.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to keep getting word out to people. I was texting people. Well, of course, when you text people, they don't realize you're texting because you can't talk. So they would call. Well, then he would grab the phone. Or I'd be on a conversation with somebody trying to explain what had happened, and he could tell I was struggling. So he would grab the phone. He didn't ask me, do you need me to get the phone? He was like, and he grabbed the phone. And he sat there until he was sure that even if it was just some temporary tape, I was held up enough to get through finishing making all those phone calls to our large family, all of Daddy's friends, everyone who knew us, everyone who knew Mama, all these people we got a call. And he sat there and then left and went on and prepared for Taylor's party. And then Vincent said it, I'm glad your friends don't listen to you. And I went in there, and sure enough, it was 2 big bags, buckets of chicken. Sometimes people can't think in that moment what they need. That's why I say we got to love people. When you love people, you know people. And you know that if given sound mind, they could probably communicate everything they need to you. But you got to love people enough to say, this is not a normal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I could remove myself from obligation by saying, well, she didn't tell me what she needed. I offered. Or I
Right.
could say, well, she's not hungry now. She probably can't think. I know there's only one food in the world she don't eat. So it really doesn't matter what she wants to eat as long as I don't pick that up.
Mm.
And even if she's not hungry now, she'll be hungry later. And all those kids are there. And her sisters are there. Like, let me just bring some food.
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped and he got that. After Darrell's passing, the tape was an unexpected surprise. Our cousin and classmate Doc married this lady named Trisha. Leading up to the class reunion, I was getting more and more depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Darrell's not going to be there. I'm not going to enjoy myself. Even the DJ, Justin was the DJ. We picked the DJ. Everything was. And the week leading up, one of the hurricanes had hit, Hurricane Ike or something. And we were worried they weren't going to be able to make it. Well, she called in the middle of the week. She said, we're going to make it and we're going to be there. And she said, ooh, I can't wait to dance with you.
Oh.
I said, you dance? She said, girl, yes. I love to dance. She was like, Doc was talking about, oh yeah, I can't wait to get you there. So you and my cousin can dance and I ain't got to be the one out there on the dance floor. I said, Trisha, those are Tiffany's exact words. I'm so glad that my husband has you as a friend, so I don't have to be out there on the dance floor. This lady had no idea how I was dreading getting there because I didn't have my forever dance partner.
Oh.
And she said that to me. So sometimes it's enough to give tape by just saying, I'm not here to replace the person, but I'm here to give you some of that joy. You were
Mm-hmm.
anticipating that you weren't going to be getting up dance because your dance partner is gone. Well, guess what, girl? I'm be there. And I was looking for a dance partner. Sometimes it's just being for that person what they need in the moment. And it doesn't even have to be major. People think, oh, people be happy if I give them $1,000,000.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But just knowing it was somebody out there that knew all the line dances completely changed the class reunion as a result
Wow.
of it. So it doesn't even have to be big pieces of tape.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could just be, for tonight, like I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, but tonight, girl, we gonna dance
I love
and we're
that.
gonna enjoy the time. And even the memorial table, it was like the candles were over there just extra flickering.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to describe it. It was like, yes, I'm here and I see what y'all are doing. Like that was designed. That's why, the hurricane did affect them, but they were
Mm-hmm.
able to get out. And it was
Yeah.
like God was like, I sent her. That's your cousin and classmate's wife, but she came for you. So that
Yeah.
you don't miss enjoying this class reunion because of who's not here.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
really
those are
beautiful.
my two
And
take moments.
I love that she was a tape in that moment because
Mhm.
she is such a sweetheart. She reaches out to me at
Yes.
like the just the most random moments, and
Hmm.
it's interesting because they got married after, and it's like she's still
Hmm.
like such a connection. It's like just an
Hmm.
extension of all the love. So I absolutely love that. And there's people that are
Hmm.
listening probably thinking, why is this dance thing so funny to the two of them? Well, I had a lot of bridesmaids. We got married. I had 16 bridesmaids. Had a big wedding.
Hmm.
We're from a small town in Arkansas. I moved to Mississippi. I went to school at Ole Miss. I worked in Memphis. So I had collected a lot of friends, and
Collected.
they were all such an important part of our love story that I could not leave anyone out, and it was very hard to pick who was going to stand with us. And I remember telling Darrell, I was like, "Listen, Keisha's not going to be a bridesmaid," and he was like, "Really?" Like he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, no, she's not going to be a bridesmaid. I was like, "She is going to be the dance maid." Like, I just need her there at the wedding reception to dance with you because I am not going to be dancing all night. And we
Mhm,
laughed about that.
mhm,
And so that's why that's
mhm.
funny to me because, like, literally at the wedding, I was like, listen, You got about 2-3 dances out of me. Keisha's here. She'll take care of the
The official dances. It was like, okay, you got to do this first dance. I even think about the DJ, the videographer, and the photographer. They were like, it seems to me like you're in charge here. What should we do next? And I'm like, come here, come with me, come here. And then I went and like grabbed people, come here. This is your moment. Come on out
Right.
here. This is what you need to do. And I still remember, our favorite win anthem, Nobody. And the DJ was like, I don't have the clean version. I said, look, in a minute, everybody knows us. They know what's about to take place here. They're going to start leaving. And then I'm going to cue you
Right.
to know when to do. But it was so funny how I was like I took over. Like I was in charge. I was on fun patrol,
Right.
And so it was funny. So he kept giving me a look and I was like, not yet.
Right.
Not yet. And here's the real. When we going to play our song? Not yet.
Right.
And then I told the DJ, all right, we're ready. Let's go. It's just, I think about that. It's like, I am so thankful because Darrell was like, well, you got to be my groomswoman. And remember, I think it was at the engagement party. You were like, have you asked her yet? Have you asked her, to stand in attendant for you? And he was like, hey, this is what, and I was like, no, I want to help organize it all because I'm like, if creative is the bride, who's gonna be back to make sure everything goes and flows, like it's supposed to do? So even in that, I thought, no, I know my role. I think this is what I'm gonna have to do. Like this will be my role. I think about that all the time. I'm like, that was like I was such an honor, like to be in that role.
Right.
Like I would not have enjoyed my role as much as one of the 16 bridesmaids or one of his many groomsmen. I wouldn't have enjoyed it because then I couldn't have worked in my element to say, no. This is what we're about to do next.
Right. So you spoke about at the reunion how you felt like the memorial candles were flickering and you could feel his presence. Mm-hmm. And I like to ask my guests, because I love a visitation dream to help me feel like he's still there. Have you had visitation dreams? And just what are your thoughts on it?
Yes, I have. I've had visitation dreams often. What's interesting is when my dad passed, I kept having visitation dreams of him trying to tell me something. Mm-hmm. So when it was happening with Darrell, I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Mm-hmm. And in probably, I guess, around Martarius graduating, mm-hmm. Probably was around then when he graduated. I realized, because I was like, maybe it's something I'm supposed to tell nephew, or maybe it's something there. I realized, no, they were just peaceful dreams of, hey, I'm just visiting you to say I'm good, you're good, mm-hmm. keep moving. Yeah. Sometimes it's not even to look for the meaning in it. Mm-hmm. It's just to give some peace. And it goes back to when I say, look for God in everything, even this morning. So last week, another visitation dream. Mm-hmm. With Darrell, Doc, it was a whole lot of us at a game, and I think it was because the Ravens beat the Cowboys the other day. So it may have been because his Ravens, beat the Cowboys the other day. All I know is, so Monday morning I get up. That was the dream. We were all at the game or whatever. So I'm like, it may have been because of that or whatever. And so I knew we had to do this Tuesday. So yesterday, this morning, just extreme sadness. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm supposed to go through eating my favorite salad without my favorite salad dressing. So I'm supposed to go through football season without having those conversations with him. And so about 30 minutes before we got on, I believe God was like, I didn't give you that dream to hurt you. Mm-hmm. It was really for peace, but you missed it. And that happens a lot. A lot of times we're thinking the dream was for this or whatever, that our subconscious, we're supposed to find something. And when we miss it, God loves us so much that he's like, that harmed you and that hurt you. That was not my intention. That's what you
Mm.
took from it. 30 minutes before we get on, guess who texts me? Chew, Pastor Mike, Mortician Mike, Undertaker, our cousin classmate. Had you in a dream the other day, checking on you. Hopefully you're okay.
Oh.
And I said, you're not going to believe this, but Tip and I are about to do live recording in this podcast, and I'm struggling.
Mm.
And I said, and then you randomly take that, which is not odd that he just randomly texts. I mean, he's full time pastor, full time running a funeral home, so he doesn't always have a lot of time. So most of the texts we get from him is just totally random. But today of all days, you sent that message, and I realized sometimes we go look for the big thing. What is this trying to tell us?
Mhm.
It may not have been trying to tell us anything. It may have just been, hey, giving you something to laugh about. You like how my Ravens beat those Cowboys? You and my wife have a good time Tuesday. Like y'all will share in that laugh
Right.
and go on.
Yeah.
But I missed it. So in the natural, another friend had to reach out and say, like he was sent. Like,
Mhm.
no, that's all it was. So I say that to say, don't go looking for the big, because
Mhm.
people hear that a lot and they say the person hasn't visited me yet, and they have. It's like it's okay.
Right.
It's our subconscious sometimes is what happens, and so yeah, that those dreams are great dreams. Sometimes those moments, just random moments of me
Mhm.
accidentally hitting the phone and dialing his number, trying to do something else.
Mhm.
Like, why would my phone go there, and
Yeah.
hit that number or whatever? You know, all of those things are sometimes the little messages from heaven, the little small things to say,
Mhm.
the waves may be high today, but you're going to be okay and you be at peace. Or to say, I'm at peace and it's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. I love that. So, just in closing, like I say, I always like to remind people that the point of this podcast, although it may start out kind of sad, the love letters to grief are often they're hard to hear. The raw emotions that come with the love letters to grief, and the things that we wish we could say if heaven could receive mail. But I do want to always close with something very positive, and we've shared a lot of positive things because we do want to encourage people that are on their grief journey. And you being 7 years out in your grief journey of losing your best friend, um, what is just something that you like to leave in closing with everyone that's listening?
You talk about the dash a lot, the time in between. There's a day you'll be born and there's a day you'll die. And we can't control the day we're born. We can't control the day we die. But those two dates are going to be on the headstone. That's going to be your story. Your life story is going to be born. We see on the obituary sunrise, sunset. Those are two dates that are going to happen. And those two dates are outside of your control. The dash is within our control.
Mm.
I say, the old cliche, is it better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? Things like this. I mourn for people who haven't experienced true friendship like Darrell and I did. It hurts me that they haven't experienced it. As badly as this hurts, I am so thankful that we had him as a friend. I'm so thankful for y'all's story. I'm so thankful for the kids and the things we've gotten to witness, with the kids, like moments we never would have gotten to experience with them, those amazing things. I'm so thankful for that. And I say all the time, the reason why it hurts so bad is because there was such great love and care and kindness for each other. What I wish for people is that people would live every day knowing the true fact that you don't know what day is going to be the end. So live loud, live big, and love big because you don't know. When you have unexpected death of a young person,
Mhm.
that should be enough to make people say, this is unexpected, and our natural minds say untimely. We've got to start living life that way, loving people. If it hurts, this badly, knowing that we'd had a great conversation that day and that we were not at odds, I can't imagine how badly it may feel to those who left out of fellowship with regrets and harm. So that's my advice to people is you only get to control what you do in that dash. You only get to control that, and go find that, make it right, enjoy that time with people as badly as it hurts. Because we're talking about, the missing ingredient, and people are like, well, I don't want to have to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trade anything for our life. I wouldn't trade anything for the things that we got to experience. I wouldn't trade anything for those just life experiences, our upbringing, growing up, being able to grow up together, those little things. I wouldn't trade anything for things like that. And I'm so thankful. As badly as things hurt with this loss, I
Mm-hmm.
am so thankful that I got to experience that and know true friendship that way. So many of us say it. We knew true friendship as a result of it. A lot of that anger I feel is knowing that there are not many true people. Like Darrell had a way of anticipating what was needed and then getting it done. And it frustrates me to be around people like, what we need done? Why is the grill not out? Darrell, you didn't have to tell Darrell to grill. We never said, Darrell, will you grill? We never had to have that conversation with him. So a lot of that is there. So I say, love on your people, and then people, be loving to people. Be loving to people. That is the best emotion to feel, to know that you have been a friend and you have loved, and know that you have received that love back. And then figure out a way to do it in how it works. Some of our friends, they're like, you always making sure you're at Marteri's game. Are you over there with Taylor? You over there? Well, because we have a good time, first of all. Let me be clear. We have a good time. I like hanging with Taylor and her friends. I think about her 16th birthday party, like, yes, we had a good time. Some people, it's hard for them to see you all because they miss him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got to understand, you may not be able to do it to the level of which everyone else does it, but still show that love some type
Mm-hmm.
of way. Even if it's just a text, a random text, a card, or something like that, is what I say. Everybody can't love big, but just love anyhow.
I love
And that's
that.
how I look at it. So,
Well, I really appreciate you for being on the podcast. And
thank
I hope
you.
that someone is listening today that may have also lost their best friend and been struggling with how to process it. And my prayer is that something that we said today not only helps them, but continues to make this journey a little bit easier. So I really appreciate you for being on the show. This episode and all
Thank
others can
you.
be found on our YouTube channel, Love Letter to Grief. I thank everyone for listening. And if there's anyone in your circle or yourself that's interested in penning a love letter to grief or appearing on the podcast, you can contact me at lovelettertogrief@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.